Hey guys, my name's Nick. I'm a Microsoft Certified Expert Administrator. Create a lot of content for MSPs. Today is the final video, part of a mini series here I've created on securing the remote workforce. It is going to be around auditing and reporting, but if you've been following along here, I've been going across the entire solution stack from Microsoft and providing some direct controls and policies that you guys can put into place in your customer environments to make them more secure. Today again is going to be geared around auditing and reporting. Before we get into the controls here, I just wanted to briefly take a step back and reflect on the size of the MSP that can have the bandwidth to go and do all of these tasks. When I think about auditing and reporting, I think about the proactive nature of doing certain reporting scans and reviews just to see if there's any trends going on in the account that you may want to take some action on. And this could be some malware trends, some phishing attacks targeted to certain users. This could be users within the organization who are high propensity for causing data loss prevention alerts, or they're doing practices that you can see are unsafe and you need to educate them. So that's really the proactive side of things. From there, we get into the reactive side of things where you need that auditing and reporting to go look things up after an incident has occurred, or if somebody opens up a ticket for something more minor in the sense that maybe they deleted one of their emails and they can't find it anymore. You can use the audit logs within Microsoft to view that information. And then lastly, obviously, we want to be proactive and also reactive with alerts that come up. So we want to generate as much automation with these reports as we can so that we can review the least amount but still get the necessary information to handle any issues that may come up. So I'm going to be addressing that when we go through here, but obviously if you're a 1 to 5 man MSP, your bandwidth for reviewing these reports and having your own SOC, for instance, is going to be a lot different than somebody who has a 100-man MSP and has a whole team that's able to go and do that, and that's their whole responsibility. So keep that in mind while we're going through here, but I wanted to at least touch on what's all in the Microsoft portal because there's definitely a lot of deep reporting that is in that tenant itself. The very first thing here is enable auditing. So this is something that is for some reason not on by default in the Security and Compliance Center when you spin up a new tenant. If you go into the Security and Compliance Center, you can go under the search section here under Audit Log Search, and by default it'll have this messaging in the tenant itself, and you can go ahead and turn it on. Generally, it takes a few hours after that for the telemetry to start pulling in for you to start doing searches within the tenant. I don't know why Microsoft doesn't turn this on by default for all tenants, but it is something where after it's in place, you can go into that section, and this is just a tenant with that in there. And you have a myriad of activities here that you can search off of to try to triage a certain incident. So this is more so, I would think, a reactive type of search if you're looking for an investigation on why something was deleted or where a document went, or where an attack was triaged from or something like that. And you have the various solutions in here that you can search of most of which you're probably going to do is Exchange. So you can view here Exchange items that are being logged as well. The log contains data for up to 90 days, and that is the longest you can store it in here without bumping yourself up to a more mature plan like E5, for instance. You can do custom plans a year out for those types of retention policies. So that's definitely something to take in mind. You could run a PowerShell script on a quarterly basis to export these features into a CSV. And some of these features, guys, I'll create separate videos for. They're not in scope for the high-level overview of this video, but I just want to touch on what you have as far as your options go. But this is something that you can come in and view certain messaging on, or view certain items within there. You can pick them, you can pick multiple, and then after you do, you can select a date range of what you want to search from, and you can select certain users you want to be part of that search, and you can go ahead and run that search and it'll pull back any activities within that time. Keep in mind, it can take up to 30 minutes or 24 hours after an event occurs for it to actually populate in here. So if you're looking for something very specific, you may have to wait if it's something that's very recent in the sense of occurring in the organization. So with that, I also did create a couple of PowerShell scripts you guys could use in the sense that you want to turn this on across all your tenants or turn on the audit log on a single tenant just as part of your onboarding SOP. So that's definitely important to have on, just to be able to do those reactive searches, or also if you're just trying to investigate something in general, you'll want to have that activity log data, and you may want to be exporting it as well too for longer than 90 days. The second one here is enable mailbox auditing. As of January of 2019, this is on by default across all users whenever you spin up a new mailbox. I do know there's some of the default audit owner roles that you may want to include that aren't part of the ones by default. So if I pull up PowerShell here, I've already run these commands, and again, this is just high level to show you. But on the default policy, this is a user with the default policy, and these are the things that it's tracking in the audit log. So these are great ones to use, obviously, for soft delete and hard delete. Those are probably the most important in my opinion. But one that it doesn't capture in the default policy is this mailbox login audit trail as well too. Back in this portal, you can choose to have that data selected, but if that user's mailbox is not set up for that audit log trail, there won't be actually any activity that is in the output of this message. So we'll just say no data available. So that may be actually something that you really want in the sense of an audit log for mailbox login attempts. You have Azure Active Directory sign-in logs if you have P1, but you do not have that in any other plan. So P1 does come with Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is the $20 a month SKU. It's one I always educate people to try to move to if you can. But it is not, its standalone price is $6 a user a month, and it's not part of M365 Business Standard or something like that, which is a lot of what SMBs have in this market today. So that is something that you may want to use the command list here to update their mailbox and enable this PowerShell commandlet with the necessary rights as well too, or audit log activity that you want to use. And this one again is also up on my GitHub page here, which I'll link below. So I've got enable mailbox auditing across all of your customer tenants for all users with those settings. I've got single tenant settings, and I've got single user settings as well too on here. So if you don't have that enabled, maybe something that you want to turn on and periodically run just for new tenant or new user onboardings. Next one here we have is review mailbox forwarding. So in my securing exchange video there that I made, I did mention that you want to create a mailflow rule that blocks auto forwarding to external domains in the organization just as a best practice. It's a common security vulnerability. If somebody's been breached, usually the attacker will go in and set up those auto forwardings to the external mail. So you want to disable that, but disabling it with the mailflow rule does not disable a user from being able to do that in Outlook on the web. So in order to review this carefully, they do have an alert policy set up under alerts and alert policies for the creation of a forwarding a redirect rule. And this is something that's turned on by default, and it does email the tenant admins in the account. And so with this one, the only thing that I would say you might want to do is change this to your PSA tool or your ticketing system or support help desk email, so that it doesn't just funnel to a global admin on the account, but redirects accordingly into your ticketing system so that you can address it immediately. And that's a good way to prevent that. If you want to prevent OWA altogether, you can come in here to the Exchange Admin Center. If you go under Mailflow, you can click on Remote Domains. And under this default one here, you can turn off automatic forwarding and save, and that will prevent OWA users as well from doing it if you want to just block it altogether. You may obviously run across some organizations that want to have this in place, you may educate them completely on the security vulnerabilities with that, and they still have this in place for a certain business practice. So that's where you want to be more proactive with the actual alerts here. Set alerts for role elevation. So this is Exchange admin privilege that they have in here. But another one I like to set up here for just outside of Exchange would be under the audit log history again here. I like to set up the alert here just because it's already available. And again, I like to put in, if you want an admin, that's fine, but typically ticketing system, PSA tool, support queue, anything like that where you're immediately addressed for this. So if someone becomes a global administrator and you didn't authorize that, you can then, maybe mark it as a false positive if it was something that was approved, but maybe you are just being more proactive then by seeing this in the account. You want to obviously keep the minimum amount of global admins in the tenant at one time. Review mailbox access by non-owners report. So this is something where you don't want to have a ton of sprawl in the sense of people having full access rights or temporary access rights to people's mailboxes. So you could review this on a monthly or quarterly basis, or you could just run a PowerShell script as well too to try to pull this information. So I have PowerShell scripts again across all customers or single tenant for viewing full access in my page here. But you could also come in here to the Exchange Admin Center if you just want to use a UI interface here and click on auditing, and then you have the non-owner mailbox access report, and you can set it and run the search across the organization and see if you have any positives there that you need to go and address on a monthly or quarterly basis that you find that customers may have set up on their own. So that's another good one to go in and view. Configure custom alerts. So we were just in the alerting section there, but I'll pop back in there right now. You have a ton of granularity in the sense of the kinds of alerts you can create here. And you can select different severities, and you can select different categories here as well too. Categories make no difference on what you're going to see on the next page. It's just for actual organization for you in the tenant. So with the activity, again, there's a myriad of activities here that you can search from. I'd say as a general guideline, there's a couple that I would set up in any tenant, but then there's a couple that I only would use if I'm adopting certain pieces of the solution stack, like data loss prevention or something like ATP, for instance, for the phishing attacks and things like that. So there's some in here: common user activities, phishing email detected at time of delivery, malware detected in email, things like that that you can do. DLP policy match, I'd say, is a great one to set up if you are enabling DLP policies, just so you can be more proactive in the education to the user around that, especially if this is a new rollout. This is actually really good for you guys to show a lot of value. And with that, there's a ton, and again, I'm not going to go through all those, but my favorite one is down here. It's insights generated, and the insights type is, and they have a lot of really cool ones here, I think, that are making you way more proactive in viewing these things within the tenant. So unusual volume of DLP policy match is a great one. Unique users contributing to incidents is a really good one as well too. And incidents are the alerts that are in here by default, or some things that they're tracking, like high amounts of spam sent and things like that. Top sensitive types in your organization is great if you're using the AIP labeling service for your documents in there. Users targeted by phishing campaigns, malware campaigns are great ones to set up as well too. Again, so you can just push those to your ticketing systems and things like that. And then if you have the ATP anti-phishing policy set up and customized uniquely, in the sense that you're whitelisting or blocking certain domains or senders, this is maybe something that you want to address here as well too. If you were whitelisting somebody and then they were coming through with phishing attacks, things like that you can address. So those ones would be ones I would say you can again tie to your PSA tool. And to piggyback off that, The next one here, the reporting is very much the same. That's in the Security and Compliance Center. There's a couple of different reporting pages you can view, and you guys are probably familiar with this, but there's your Mailflow dashboard. And within here, you can see Mailflow activity, you can see SMTP auth clients, you can see non-delivery, you can see auto forwarding in this page as well too. And this, if this was an actual number, I could open up it in a new page. I can see top domain mail flows if you have many domains in the tenant, things like that. So this page I don't really get into of a lot. Maybe you want to do some viewing of the non-delivery report here that you want to come into, and maybe you want to request this or view the details of who that was and the sample messages and things like that. But generally I want to work out of the threat management dashboard here. So there's a lot of deeper reporting in the sense of the things that you're seeing on this page with the top malware trends, URL protection reports, mail flow status, things like that you can get into here. And then lastly, the just reports page in general here is a custom dashboard. And these contain some of the things that we looked at on the incidents alerts that you could have already set up, so you don't have to come in here for every client to review. And this is where we get into the bandwidth conversation in the sense of how much time do you actually have to come in here and review this for every client, especially when you don't have admin on behalf of rights into tenants with partner center access. So it's something that you definitely want to come in. I would pick the reports that are most important to you in the sense of reviewing over time. Again, if you don't have ATP, you're not going to want to look at ATP. Same thing with DOP. You would want to see false positives or policy matches though and trends like that over time if you were enforcing that within the tenant. And the same thing with encryption and a connector for a third-party AV, spoof detections as well too. So with these reports, this tenant isn't very active obviously, so there's not a lot of metadata here that I can show, but the best thing you can come in and do for these types of reports is to create this schedule, and you can send this as a schedule on a monthly basis or bi-weekly basis, quarterly basis to your PSA tool or ticketing system, something like that, where it opens up a ticket and you can direct it to the customer level and you can have your record keeping that way. So it's at least automating the facilitation of this report into your central PSA, where you can then just work out of the PSA versus having to go across to all your various tenants, log into the Security and Compliance Center and review these on a frequent basis to try to keep up with any trends that are going on, or maybe see trends that can lead to end user training or something like that. So that's definitely my recommendation. When you onboard a tenant, definitely set up the connections to your PSA tool. It's part of your onboarding checklist for that, but then you get that whole holistic view right within PSA of everything that you would want to see. So hopefully, even if you're a smaller shop, you can then still evaluate a lot of these reports. Usage reports here, then this next one I consider to be optional. This is something where I think only certain MSPs find value out of this. This is within the main admin center here. If you go into reports and then usage, you can see certain changes in usage across the suite of the offerings here. So I would say it comes into play more maybe when you've recently tried to do training on a certain product, like OneDrive, for instance, or SharePoint or Teams or something like that, where you want to see what adoption looks like after you've completed that training. Or maybe you're just coming in here proactively to see where users are gravitating towards to communicate. And if all of a sudden you see a spike in OneDrive usage, maybe you need to evaluate if they're seeing everything that's correct there, and also be ready for any support related issues, because obviously the more volume of something that somebody's working out of, you may likely get some support tickets that come as well too. So it's good just to be proactive and kind of looking at this, but in the sense of time, again, that's where you get into this bandwidth constraint of how much value does this actually provide you. And so I would say, if you do have the time to come in and review this, there's a lot of great reports in here, and you can see a lot of various things and user activity on a granular level. If this is Teams activity, and you can even see channel message, calls, meetings, everything like that. This is again a very inactive tenant, but likely this would be pretty complete with a lot of information that you can then report on, maybe as part of a QBR or something like that, to show how much activity is actually going on within the tenant, maybe to try to enforce certain controls, or maybe to try to tell them that there's an upsell opportunity for more security in relation to these tools, like the data loss prevention package that only comes with the M365 Business Premium if they're on standard or something like that. So that's how I would use it, more as a sales tool than anything else. So you can actually see where they're trending in their activity. Reduce sign-in logs. So this one is in the Azure Active Directory Admin Center here. And with this, you can come down. Again, this is only available with the P1 plan. So you only have access to this if you have Microsoft 365 Business Premium, or you have this standalone, or you have EMS plus E3, which is $875 standalone, and that comes with Intune as well. So again, there's not going to be a ton of tenants that can see this in the sense if you haven't adopted this, but you can come in here and view activity for sign-in activity, and you can see certain things like if people failed conditional access, for instance, if they're using that. And you can add filters here. I think one of the coolest ones is this client app one, where you can actually add filters for legacy auth, and you can see if anybody's logging in with IMAP or POP protocol across the tenant, and I don't think anybody is in this one, so there's no sign-ins found, but maybe that's something that you want to review periodically, and maybe that's again on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, just to make sure you're buttoned up there in the sense of security with these modern or legacy protocols that don't support MFA. But you also can come in here and you can export this into the log analytics data from Azure. So with this is, you have to have an Azure subscription stood up to be able to start collecting these analytics. But keep in mind the pricing. They do give you 5 gigs of ingestion for free, and then you pay around $275 a gig of ingestion. So just keep in mind, if you are choosing to push in sign-in logs in the audit logs, just be cognizant of that in case you have a lot of telemetry. Obviously, again, in this tenant, I don't have a lot going on, so I could probably do that no problem and export those into that area there. But if you're looking at these other areas like the audit log, this is collecting all the Graph API data for Azure Active Directory, but it's more than that. It's getting it across entire solutions. So there's a lot of things that users could be doing within the organization to log these events in here, and it's great obviously for historical tracking, but if you're thinking about exporting it here to get retention that's more than just a month, because that's the longest time period you can get in the sense of these audit logs here, then you just want to be careful about how much you're actually going to be ingesting there. You may want to see like what's my run rate on a 7-day period of how much log activity, and just download that and see how big the file is, and then go from there on what that would look like. I'll link the pricing below there too, so you have it as a reference for the log analytics, just if you want to keep that there. Finally, here we have the device management reports, and this is for Microsoft Intune. If you are using Microsoft Intune and you want to get reporting on device compliance, encryption reports, things like that, there's a couple different places here, one of which is just the reports tab, which is really in preview still for a lot of things. But the device compliance summary is here, and you can refresh this on a periodic basis, and you can go to the reporting section here, and there's device compliance and device compliance trends. That could be good that you want to come in here and review, and just review on a monthly basis for these, so the devices that are not compliant. If you have conditional access policies that are blocking these devices, you probably are going to have to identify those quicker. There's no real way that I know of today beyond reaching into the Graph API to start to pull this information into a PSA tool or something like that, where I could push it over Graph API, and then Azure Functions can do this as well too, and they can do the same with running PowerShell scripts as a job for you in the cloud, which I'm going to make some videos about because I think those are really cool and could be very helpful. But that is only what's there at this time. The other place you can view this data is in here under the monitor section under devices. And this one actually I like almost better because I can see non-compliant devices in actual report. I can see the encryption report as well too, if it's been applied, if the status is a go, and address any issues with encryption there, especially if I'm dealing with some HIPAA clients or any compliance-based clients that need to have that in place for certain controls. And lastly there we have assignment status as well too, so anything that you're pushing out, whether that be the compliance profiles or anything like that, you can see if they are succeeding across all devices, and you can drill down into them to see what devices are not. So this is another good one. You probably just need an administrator to come in here, but again, we talk about size of the MSP and bandwidth and all of that. It's definitely in consideration. So that's everything I wanted to show for you guys as part of these controls. I'd love to hear what you guys are doing for reporting and auditing and how you manage that with the size of your MSP. So feel free to comment below to help out the community, and also feel free to leave any questions or comments about the things I covered today. Otherwise, guys, please like or subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more content around Microsoft 365 and the MSP space. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.